amazing guys at Cavendish helping them with their marketing. I should say before I start, there are no planned fire drills tonight. So if the fire alarm goes off, not that anything's going to burn in this weather, but if it does, we're all to make our way through the squall round the front to the pond over there, which by the time we get there will probably be a lake. So it's not going to be, there's no fire drills tonight, we'll be absolutely fine. Now I work with the guys at Cavendish on their marketing for one very important reason. They are so forward thinking. I worked for 10 years in the property industry and there's very few estate and lettings agencies like the guys at Cavendish. You know, David who's going to be on soon and Nick who's going to be on soon. David's written this amazing book, The Landlord's Playbook. There'll be an opportunity for you to get to this book during the course of today, but I would say it's a playbook, it's really helpful. And there's not many people in our industry who produce literally how to be a landlord books, and they also hold events like this. So why are we holding this event? There's been a small change in the law, a disturbance in the force. It's been going on for a while, and we run a survey. So I run a company that basically surveys the property industry called The Voice of the Agent. We interview hundreds and hundreds of thousands of estate agents and letting agents. Last year we interviewed landlords. We found that only 1 in 7 landlords were fully prepared for the renters' rights bill as it was at the time. And just under 10% had no idea what impact it would have on them. That's 240,000 landlords. So when David and Nicola came to me and said, look, we're going to do this event, I said, that's the best idea you can have. Regardless if they're Cavendish agents or not, clients or not, that's an amazing idea to do that event for landlords in Chester. So, it gives me great pleasure to welcome to the stage David Adams, the Managing Director of Cavendish. David!
Just by a show of hands, who here believes that being a landlord right now is more hard than it ever has been? Hands up if you agree. Everyone in the room, pretty much. Okay, I'm in the right room. Raise your hand again if you agree that government policy is now being written by people who've never actually managed a tenancy. Hands up. Everyone again. Good. So, you'll all be here for different reasons tonight. Perhaps you've read the Renters' Rights Act already, all 200 pages of it, and you're sat here thinking which part actually applies to you. Possibly you've seen these scary £7,000 fines and that the local authorities are now actively trying to seek and prosecute landlords who make the tiniest of mistakes. Or potentially you're like most landlords and you got into buy-to-let to make some passive income. But somewhere along the way, it started to feel less passive and more like a full-time job. Does this sound familiar? Hands up if you agree? Yeah, quite a lot of you. So, bear with me, I want you to imagine something different. So let's say you've got a strategy, you've got a system where you don't lie awake at night wondering if you've missed something. And it doesn't matter who's in government, what the base rate is, whether there's a war going on out there, or what new rules and regulations get thrown our way, because your portfolio is built to absorb that. So imagine this, your tenant pays on time. They pay the full market rate, and the relationship is professional, not fractional. Now, if this is where you are at the moment, let's say, and it'll be different for everyone in the room, everyone will be here for different reasons, and let's say this is where you want to be over here, would you agree with me that you need a new strategy? You need to be doing something a bit different. Would you agree? Yes or no? So Marshall Goldsmith says, what got you here isn't going to get you where you want to be. Whatever's getting you these results over here is not going to get you these results over here. So this is why we're here tonight. We're not here to scare you. We're certainly not here to sell you fear or anything like that. But we'd like to show you how you can operate differently when this Renters' Rights Act comes in. Now, why is this important? Well, did you know there's now over 170 pieces of legislation that landlords and letting agents like us that we need to know? And under the Renters' Rights Act, the margin for error is just getting smaller and smaller. One incorrectly served notice, one missing document, and they're talking a minimum £7,000 fine. Now, who here is a self-managed landlord? Who here actually manages their own tenancies? Hands up? Yeah, quite a lot of you. So I have a lot of respect for you guys. As a letting agent, this is no longer just collecting the rent and fixing the boiler like it was 10 years ago maybe. We are literally operating in one of the most regulated industries in the country, and that regulation is about to change again. Now, would we all agree that over the last few years, costs have gone up? Would you agree, yes or no, yeah? Yeah? Maintenance costs more, doesn't it? Insurance costs more. Let's call out the elephant in the room. Letting agents, we've upped our fees. So, have you all upped your rents to cover those costs? Or are you like a lot of landlords, and you've absorbed all these costs, and now you've seen your profits start to decrease? So, before we go any further, before we show you what frameworks we're going to show you to overcome all of this, you're probably wondering, who's David Adams, who's Nicola Blake standing up here tonight? So I'm going to bring my co-director Nicola to the stage to tell you our story.
Who here has ever had imposter syndrome or felt like you can't do something? Yeah, that's me tonight, that's me most days. But let me take you back to the early 2000s when me and David first started our careers. We both joined Cavendish, myself in lettings, David in sales, as office juniors. So we had all the important jobs, making the tea, printing the sales particulars, printing the lettings list, because we printed everything back then. And if the printer broke, well, that was your crisis management training for the day. So I worked in our office on Grosvenor Street. Steve, you might remember it. We had a blue door and you walked in. There was 2 desks. One was my desk and one was my manager's Steph. Steph, she was about my height. She had a short bob and she had this round happy face, and she always wore this long coat with a fur collar, and it just really gave off like boss energy. She was who I aspired to be. Because I was new to the company, my desk had a sign which said training in progress. I wasn't allowed to speak to the landlords or the tenants, which is ironic given I'm standing here tonight. And David, over in the sales office, our office on Cupping Street was one of the biggest offices for estate agencies. It was really bright, it had really bright big windows, and when you walked in, all of the sales particulars used to be on display. So you'd start at one end, at the cheapest end, and you'd walk all the way around to the far end. And that was what we'd call right moving 3D then. And David had a manager called Max. What was Max like? He was a ball of energy, wasn't he? He was a tall, slim guy, dark hair. He always had one pen behind his ear and another in his hand. And if you weren't doing deals and making the phone ring, Max wasn't happy. So we both progressed in David in sales, me in lettings. David was a trainee valuer and I progressed to office manager. We both did qualifications, level 3, and then I actually went on to do a level 4 qualification, which was a brand new qualification at the time, and was one of the first in the country to pass it, so I was really proud of that. So after that, David decided he wanted to broaden his horizons and come over to the letting side. So he was valuing properties in North Wales, and yeah, I progressed to operations manager. And then something happened. Our managing director at the time decided it was time to retire. So there we were, 2 former office juniors, now running the business.
Yeah, so we were a ship without a captain. Our managing director, Christine, who some of you, if you're clients of ours, you may remember Christine from many years ago. She retired. So my dad, Julian, who's the chairman of the business, he stepped in as managing director, just on a temporary basis. But as you can imagine, this temporary basis ended up lasting several years, which is always the way. And during this time, I progressed to lettings director. I joined the board of directors, and Nicola had progressed to operations manager, the compliance guru for the business, overseeing all of the compliance, like the Renters' Rights Act. And we'd always had this dream, Nicola and I, that one day I would take over the family business and we would end up running the company. Little did I know, back in May of 2022, so 4 years ago now, when I walked into my dad's kitchen for our weekly meeting that we used to always have, that this would be the day that everything would change. And he put this big mug of tea in front of me on the table. He stared over me, and I was sat down. And he said, "Son, it's about time you stepped up and took over the reins. How about it?" And I said, "Yes, this is what I've always wanted." So I was to become the managing director of Cavendish. And the first thing I did, I brought Nicola on as operations director and formed a new leadership team, and now we were running the business. And then this imposter syndrome sunk in. And I had this little voice inside me going, "David, who are you to become the managing director of Cavendish? You don't know what you're doing. You've never run a business before." Well, this was all true. So the first thing I did, I went and got a coach. I got a business coach who was a life coach too. His name was Mark, and Mark was a very cool guy, dark wavy hair, wicked tan, looks a bit like a surfer dude. Something that was really interesting about Mark is that back in 2015 he was diagnosed with terminal lymphoblastic leukemia and given 6 months to live. Now fast forward 7 years later, and he was very much still with us, and he'd just overcome this massive relapse, all down to his amazing resilience and mindset. So this was the guy that was going to get me fit to take over the family business. So we started working together, and the first thing Mark realised is that before we worked on Cavendish, we needed to work on David. There was a lot of work to be done on me. So we delved into self-development, and we did all sorts of self-development practices, meditation, cold water, breath work, and went through a real transformation. And anyone who knew me back then, who knows me today, I'm pretty much unrecognisable. So we'd done the work on me, and now it was time to work on Cavendish. So we started working together, and everything was going great. And about 9 months in, we hit a bit of a ceiling point, and Mark sat me down and he said, "You need to be working with someone specific to your industry, to lettings." Now I know this lady called Sally Lawson, who coaches letting agents, and he'd met her on a public speaking course. Both of them were phenomenal public speakers. So he introduced us to this lady called Sally. We went down to her one-day course in London, and we ended up joining her coaching mastermind. Now we're working with her one-on-one, transforming our business. We created new services to help and serve landlords like you, and we had a much more efficient business. And we had so much success that after a few months, she texted me and sent me a message that said, "David, I'm so impressed with what you and Nicola have done at Cavendish that I'd really like you to come down to London to Slough," which isn't a very nice place, if I'm honest, to a virtual recording studio and speak on stage in front of 200 letting agents at a virtual conference. How about it? Now let me tell you, I went white, because at this stage, public speaking, believe it or not, was my biggest fear ever. I mean, so bad that I wouldn't even go to one of those networking events, you have to stand up and go, "Hello, my name's David from Cavendish, we sell properties, we let properties." Wouldn't even do anything like that. I mean, things like BNI, I've got 2 kids, I don't mind getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, it pretty much happens every day, but I wouldn't even go to anything like that because the thought of public speaking made me sick. And so I spoke to our business coach, I spoke to Mark, and I said, "Mark, what do I do? I've got this opportunity, what do I do?" Now the words he said next, I'd probably say changed my life. And he said, "Life will always be the hardest when you are crossing over to a new level. Don't get discouraged." Now this was a quote off Hollywood actor Morgan Freeman. "Life will always be the hardest when you are crossing over to a new level. Don't get discouraged." This was my time to level up. Maybe I could turn my biggest fear into my biggest superpower. Think about that. Think about, we've all got fears, haven't we? Imagine what your fear is. Could you turn that into a superpower? So I said to Sally, "Yeah, let's do it. What do I need to do?" So she put me in touch with a guy called Tosin, who coached her how to public speak. He coached Mark how to public speak. He was an amazing public speaker. And we worked together, and 8 weeks later I spoke on stage on that virtual event. And in front of 200 letting agents, no script, no prompts or slides or anything. We spoke for about half an hour. And I did such a great job that 6 months later she invited me to go down to London and speak on stage at a flagship event in front of 500 people live in the room. And the best part was that my old man was sat in the front row. So we had this new skill. I had this new skill. I could public speak. So Nicola and I, we started doing landlord webinars. Now, we've been doing landlord webinars for about 3 years now. In fact, has anyone been to one of our webinars before? Just by a show of hands? Quite a few of you. I'd say it's great to see so many of you in the room who have attended our webinars, because when we do them, all we see is the camera and the slide presentation a bit like this. We don't get to see your faces, so it's nice to see some of you in the room here tonight. So we started doing webinars, and when we started on this journey, we had real imposter syndrome. But by stepping out of our comfort zone and working with coaches and mentors, we've got where we are today. And these are some of the people that we work with now. So top left, that's Sally, that's our lettings agent, business coach. That was an award we won last year. This is Tosin, very cool guy. He's our public speaking coach. In fact, Nicola and I work with Tosin one-on-one now. Have done for 2 years. We wouldn't be stood on this stage if it wasn't for him, to be honest. And he actually took us through our NLP practitioner course and our certified empowerment coaching course so we could coach our teams. So this is me breaking a board in my hands. This is Nicola and I bending a steel bar with our tracheas. I was very hoarse for a couple of days after that. This is me speaking on stage at this virtual event, and then 6 months later on stage. And this is an award won for marketing. So hands up. Is anyone sat here tonight because they had about 50 emails from me over the last few months? Yeah, hands up? Yeah, quite a few of you. We won an award for that, for me. So we have one of the most highly attended webinars and marketing systems for letting agents now, and that, I'll be honest, that's all thanks to you guys, for attending webinars with us and engaging with us. This one here, the Leaders Lifestyle Podcast, that's Mark Bryant, my business coach. Mark sadly lost his life a few months ago. He lost his battle with cancer in the end, and what was interesting, when we first started working together, the first thing he asked me to do was to go down to Hobbycraft on Sealer Road, and I had to buy this big brown roll of paper, like big brown roll of wallpaper, and I had to put 2 big table weights on it on my dining room table, and we mapped out everything we were going to do with Cavendish. Now, one of the first things we wrote actually was that we were going to have dedicated sales progressors, and I'm glad to see our first dedicated sales progressor, Emily, is sat right at the back of the room. That took a few years to happen, but that happened in the end. And the second thing we wrote down was seminars. He said, you've got to be on stage coaching and helping landlords. And I know it took a few years to happen, but I'm sure if you were still here today, you'd be very proud of what we've achieved. And the final one, the Landlord's Playbook, as Simon mentioned before. So last year, I emptied my head of everything I knew about lettings. So this is 23 years worth of lettings knowledge. And the best part is I've got a really short attention span. So I wrote it pretty much for me, people like me. So you don't have to read it cover to cover. You could pick it up. And if, for example, if you've got a problem with rent arrears, you could read the rent arrears chapter. Let's say you were thinking of exiting as a landlord, and you think of different ways you could exit the market with, perhaps paying the least tax. You could read that chapter. Or let's say you needed a bit of an umph, and you thought, I need some mindset. I need some motivation. You could read the chapter on mindset. It's one of my favourite things to coach landlords is about having a business owner mindset. I've done a lot of coaching and training myself. I've been taught a lot about that over the last few years, and I love to translate that into how landlords can have that same mindset. So literally, if a landlord read this cover to cover, it would pretty much change the way they operate their business. So in fact, who would like this copy? Would anyone like this copy? Yeah? Who would like this copy? Anyone like this book? Does anyone want to take it from my hands? First person? There we go. Congratulations, big round of applause. You see, that was one of the first things that Nick and I learned, is that if you want something, you've got to go and get it. You've got to take action. So, what are we working on now? Well, Nick and I have been in the industry. If you toss up the years we've been in the industry, it's a bit scary actually. It's about 50 years, isn't it, between us? And we've been coaching a lot of landlords one-to-one. Some will be in the room here tonight. We manage hundreds of properties on behalf of landlords in Chester. And we sat down about 6 months ago, and we sort of masterminded between ourselves. What are the biggest challenges that landlords face on a day-to-day basis? And some of these challenges you might identify with one. You might identify with 2 or 3 maybe. You be the judge of it. But we identified that there were 6 main challenges. Now, the first challenge is people. So, hands up. Who's ever had a dispute with one of their tenants? A few of you? Who's ever had to chase rent? Yeah? Who's ever had a tenant that was all right at the start and then things started to change a few months in? Yeah, quite a few of you. You see, one of the biggest problems we worked out in property, it's not necessarily the bricks and the mortar, bricks and the mortar, even getting words like it. It's behaviour. I'm talking communications, emails. See, most problems that arise at 12 months into a tenancy, they actually start to fester before the keys are even handed over, before the tenancy begins. And it's a big challenge that landlords need to overcome. And the second challenge we identified is property. So, would you agree? We've got an ageing housing stock, haven't we? Yeah, would you agree? I'm talking old roofs, old boilers. You know, there's kitchens from 2008 that are clinging on for dear life. We've got EPC upgrades on our way as well in the next few years. You see, property, it's not passive, it's a living asset. And if it's not upgraded strategically, it deteriorates reactively. And I think you'd all agree, landlords who behave reactively end up paying more. Now the next challenge is process. This one can be a bit uncomfortable sometimes. Hands up, who here's got a proper CRM system that they use? Not many people. And I'm talking every email, every communication, every document, all files. Because when things go wrong, you don't win arguments with opinion anymore. You win them with evidence. And that's a big thing that Nicola's going to be talking about very shortly, which is going to be crucial when this Renters' Rights Act comes in. Now the next one, again, someone once said to me that profit for landlords is a dirty word. I don't think so. Profit, not a lot of landlords making enough profit. I mean, by show of hands, who here is making more profit than they were 5 years ago? Anyone? Yeah, a few people, great. You see, I believe landlords need to make profit because if you're making profit, if you have a void period, you can swallow that. If new legislation like this, you can take that on board. You see, you can build a legacy. I would argue, if you're not making profit, what's the point? The next challenge we identified is positioning. So let's say your tenant gives notice tomorrow. What do? You put it on Gumtree? Do you put it on Facebook, on one of those local Facebook groups? Or do you have a proper marketing system that you switch on and 2 days later you come back and you've got 15 tenants that have all funneled in, they've all been referenced and vetted, and you've got, let's say, 3 or 4 to choose from that they want to pay the market rate, they want to move in as soon as possible, and they want to stay as long as possible, if that's what you want. Another big challenge that landlords need to overcome. The next challenge, prosecution. This is the one that keeps landlords awake at night. As I said before, there's now over 170 pieces of legislation that letting agents like us and landlords like you, we all need to know. And the margin for error under this new act is just getting thinner and thinner. And the local authorities, it's not just a line I use, they are literally now, they are targeting landlords and because they're all on commission. And Nicola's got some very interesting stats on that, haven't you? So what we created to overcome all of this is the Landlord Risk and Return Blueprint. And by the way, this is working right now. This has actually been working for decades with Cavendish. But we just sat down about 6 months ago and decided to call it, this funky name. And there are solutions to all of these challenges. So, for example, the 5D people risk safeguards. Literally, there are 5 key areas to minimise disputes, reduce rent chasing, and ultimately have a happier tenant, which ultimately leads to having a happier landlord. We have the property care system, and we're talking EPC upgrades, and making sure that we're not acting reactively. There are four key areas that we help landlords on in this area. As you can see, we like acronyms, by the way. The landlord cast process. So again, four key areas here for landlords to focus on. So that if the council come knocking, which by the way they do now, and they want a copy of your latest tenancy file, your audit, you literally don't need to worry. Profit, the EAR profit engine. Now this very much helps landlords build a legacy, make sure they're keeping their expenditure down, their income's up, and ultimately, say what it is on the tin. You're making money. Positioning, 4 Ps of marketing. This is how to get the best tenants who stay the longest and have 0 void periods, ideally. And the final one, the LCI protection shield. So this is the one that basically helps landlords sleep at night. You know, basically keeps you on the right side of the law. And obviously, we're not going to go into all of this tonight, obviously, because at the end of the day, this would probably take all day. And you come here tonight specifically because we're going to deliver a session on the Renters' Rights Act for you. So I'm going to bring Nicola back on the stage, and we're going to go into the legislation part of this part of the model. So over to Nicola.
Legislation is always something that seems to be in the media. Would you agree with me that there's always changes that need to be done by landlords to help keep them compliant and on the right side of the law? Since I started at Cavendish, I've been around for EPC regulations, tenant deposit protection, Deregulation Act. We even had the COVID eviction ban when we were all on lockdown. So yes, there's always something that we need to be looking at and keeping up to date with. So we're here to talk about the Renters' Rights Act. Doesn't it feel like we've been talking about the Renters' Rights Act for ages? It's just been around for years. When it was first introduced, it was a Renters Reform Bill, and it was brought in through the Conservative government. Since then, we've changed to a Labour government. They renamed it Renters' Rights Act, and now this is the biggest change to the industry in 37 years. It was brought in October 25, it was enacted, and it's going to come in 3 phases. The first phase is 1st of May, and we're not too far from that date, so we need to be ready for that date. Phase 2 and Phase 3, these are due to come end of this year and 2030 onwards. What you're going to find is that anything that landlords and letting agents have to act on, that's coming first. Anything that the government have to do, well, that's coming later because we've got to do our bit first. So yeah, tonight I'm going to talk you through everything that is coming through on the renters' rights. Unlike David, I do need slides because there's quite a lot to cover there. I'm not going to read all that out, but if you'd like to take a picture or make notes as we go through, you're welcome to. Yeah, you can do, yeah. So actually, when the Renters' Rights Act was enacted, there was something that came through on the 27th of December. In that little quiet period between Christmas and New Year, when you're not really sure what day it is, probably still eating your Christmas chocolates and wearing your Christmas PJs. I know I was anyway. But on this date, they brought in that councils can actually request information to check compliance, check that landlords are compliant. So they can request paperwork at the drop of a hat at short notice and ask to see your tenancy files to make sure that you're compliant with the legislation. If a tenant reports an issue, they can even inspect the property. So what's going to be evident throughout this is documentation is going to be crucial all the way through the changes to the Renters' Rights Act. Tenancy structures are changing. Usually when tenants move in, we have a fixed contract, it's 6 or 12 months. From day one, it will be a periodic tenancy, and all existing tenancies will actually convert over on the 1st of May as well. There is a little positive to this. The tenants will now have to give 2 months' notice if they want to leave. And if you've got a tenancy agreement in writing, then you'll need to issue an information leaflet. We have to do that by the 31st of May. If you haven't got a tenancy agreement in writing, you'll also need to issue a written statement. So it's really important that you're looking at your files now and getting things in order to make sure that you're ready for that. The information leaflet is actually not out yet. The government have said it's going to come in March. So it could come tomorrow, it could come on the 31st of March. We don't know. We don't actually know what it looks like yet. We think it's probably going to replace it is replacing the How to Rent guide. And what's going to have to happen is that you're going to serve it by the information leaflet by the 31st of May. You have to make sure it's served on the tenant and guarantors if you've got one, and you have to evidence that they've had it. Who here's ever served a Section 21 notice on the tenant? The headline has always been, Section 21s are going, you're never going to be able to get your property back. So Section 21s are being abolished, that's true, but it doesn't mean that you're never going to be able to get your property back. We just have to use a different route for possession. if you've served a Section 21 and it's currently still running, you've got until the 31st of July to act on it. You can still serve a Section 21 up until the 1st of May as well. So yes, the new regime under Section 8. Currently, if you serve notice on your tenant under Section 8, there are 17 grounds for possession. There's going to be 30 grounds once the Renters Rights Act comes in, so there will be more reasons that you can use for this notice. We would imagine that the majority of you will choose the reason of either looking to sell or looking to move back in. Maybe if you've got students, you might need to rely on ground 4A. We don't tend to deal with students, so I'm not up to speed with that ground, unfortunately. But yeah, longer notice periods are going to be introduced as well. So if you do want to sell or move back in, it will be a 4-month notice, and tenants will have security of occupancy for a minimum period of 12 months. One thing I do want to raise under Section 8 though is, if you've ever had a tenant who's had rent arrears and you've served notice under Section 8, currently the tenant has to be 2 months in arrears and you can serve a 2-week notice. After the 1st of May, a tenant will have to be in 3 months arrears before you can use that notice, and it will be a 4-week notice. So if you rely on that renter's income and you have got a tenant paying rent for 4 months, and then you've got to apply to court for possession, would you agree with me that this has the ability to go very wrong very quickly if that happens? So we would recommend that you have an insurance policy in place to cover rent protection, so then if the tenant does default on the rent, you've got a mechanism to have the rent paid whilst you're looking at proceedings to get the tenant out of the property. And more often than not, the insurance will cover your legal costs as well, so that would be something that we would strongly recommend. I'm just going to bring David back onto the stage for a moment.
So if anyone who's looking for a recommendation, by the way, for rent guarantee insurance or landlord insurance, in your tote bags, there's some car air fresheners, so that's by a company called Letterlines. They're the thing that we use for all of our tenant referencing and rent protection. So I just want to touch on Section 8 for a second. Who here, over the last couple of years, be honest, has seen all of this coming and thought, do you know what, now might be the time to get out, just by a show of hands? Has anyone thought of selling in the last few years? Yeah? And just to flip this, who's seen all this and perhaps seen some of the headlines, landlords exiting in their droves, and thought this is actually an opportunity to buy more properties and expand their portfolio? Quite a few of you, yeah. So we identified this a couple of years ago, and we started a service. It's a bit like a matchmaking service for landlords. So we match landlords who want to sell with landlords who want to buy. Because under the new Renters Rights Act, if you want to sell your property, traditionally you would serve notice on the tenant would leave, hopefully, and then you'd engage with an estate agent, you put the property on the market. Now the average time to sell a property in Chester is about 60 to 70 days currently. So let's say it sells within 2 months, 2.5 months. And then the average time for a sale to go through, well, that's another 4 or 5 months. So if you go down that route, you've had the property empty potentially for 6, 7, 8, 9 months, no rent coming in, your mortgage might still be payable if you've got a mortgage, insurance, etc., etc. So from a business point of view, if we adopt this business owner mindset, and you forget, I'm a landlord, you think this is a business we're running, whether that's 1 property or 20, if you've got no income coming in, but you've still got all your expenditure to go out, that's not a great place to be in. But you might, overlook that because that's the method of sale that you want. Or you can go down the route of selling it off market, which is something that we can help with, where you don't need to serve notice on your tenant. We engage with buy-to-let investors. We've got an investor list now that's got about 1,500 people on it who specifically want to buy buy-to-let tenanted properties. That's the only type of property they want to buy. And if someone wants to sell a property, we put it out discreetly to this list. Don't put it on Rightmove. No board goes out. The tenant doesn't even know, by the way. We discreetly go and value the property and appraise it and take some photos. We go and do an inspection, basically, and that's what we use as the marketing. And if we find an investor that wants to buy it, then let's say the sale gets agreed, and it still takes 4 or 5 months maybe. It might take quicker. A lot of buy-to-let investors, quite a lot of people are buying cash these days. About 35% of the market are buying cash, we're finding at the moment. So in that case, deals are going through a bit quicker. But during this time, your rent's still getting paid up until the point of completion. And then on the day of exchange, we let the tenant know, by the way, landlord's sold, it completes next week, or it's completed today. And this is your new landlord who is going to take over the tenancy. So it's actually the third option for tenants as well. Now, under the Renters' Rights Act, if we go the other way, and we're thinking of selling the property with vacant possession, if you serve notice on the tenant leaves, you put it on the market, and let's say 4 months later, you've had a few viewings, but it hasn't sold. So what most landlords do in this case at the moment is they'll go, well, we either need to reduce the price, or we'll re-let it. Most people re-let it, if I'm honest. That's what we're finding at the moment. We've got quite a few properties that have become vacant, they've gone on the market for sale, it hasn't happened for whatever reason, and then the landlord's re-let it. Well, under the new Renters' Rights Act, if you do that within a 12-month period, you get a £7,000 fine. Because if you use the Section 8 because you want vacant possession to sell a property, you can't re-let it for 12 months. So our advice to any landlord thinking of that route would be, you either need to get in the mindset of, we are selling it, we're going to price to entice, we're going to put on the market for a price where we're going to attract a buyer quickly and sell it, or be ready perhaps for a big long void period if it doesn't work out, or go down the route of off-market, which is something we can help with. So there are members of our sales team actually in the room tonight. This isn't a sales pitch, by the way, we're just letting you know this is what we do. So there's a few of our sales team over there. Guys, just give us a wave. So we've got Phil, Chrissy and Christy, they're our sales valuers. They've actually said they're more than happy, if anyone is interested in perhaps selling a rental property, they're more than happy to have a quick chat with you, perhaps give you a desktop valuation and talk a bit about that service. So while I'm up here just giving Nicola a break, I just want to introduce you to something that we offer landlords, and that is a tenancy health check. Now, with all of this new legislation coming, it's never been more important to make sure your tenancy file is up to scratch. Would you agree? Yeah. So we offer a tenancy health check where if you want to scan that QR code, it's the same QR code that's on the 2 banners. It's also the same QR code that's on the little A5 brochure that will be in your tote bags. But if you want to scan that at any point tonight, you go through to a diary page, and if you want to book a free 30-minute consultation with one of us, just have a chat about your tenancy. Basically we do a tenancy audit. It's a 57-point checklist that we go through, and part of that, by the way, is a rent review. So I'm now just going to show you a couple more ways we might be able to help before I pass you back to Nicola. Chester Landlord Support Community. So we actually have a private Facebook group, especially for landlords in Chester. We don't let anyone who isn't a landlord in this group. There are some people who have gone through the net, if I'm honest. People trying to sell things. Removal companies, electricians, etc. But no, this is a group just for landlords, and there's quite a lot of Facebook groups out there. Have any of you seen them? These landlord Facebook groups. There is a lot of them out there, and we were looking a couple of years ago when we set this up, and there's a lot of scary things happening in these Facebook groups. Basically, people giving horrendous advice, things that weren't legal. So we thought, you know what, why don't we just create a Facebook group that's our Facebook group, we can control. And basically, if anyone posts a question in here about compliance, about anything lesson related, the people that answer it are us two. So it's going to be the right advice. So by all means, take a picture of that. If anyone wants to come and join us, you're more than welcome to come and join us on there. And final slide from me, the Chester Landlord podcast. We created our own podcast about 6 months ago. Everyone's got a podcast these days, I feel, but because there's so many changes in the industry, especially for landlords like you, we thought, well, you know what, why don't we create a podcast, and every time there's something that changes, or something that landlords need to know in our area, we We'll go into our little recording studio. We've got a little recording studio in one of our offices. It's just a couple of pull-up banners, a bit like this, but it looks really cool. And we put the episodes on our YouTube channel, and they also go on podcast app as well. So, for example, they're not massive long episodes. I recorded a 10-minute one about sanction checks a few weeks ago. But by all means, if you want some little bite-sized things that might be able to help, by all means check that out as well. So I'm now going to pass you over to Nicola.
So big. So, if you do have to go to court for possession, which I must say actually, 9 times out of 10, tenants do tend to go on to leave of their own accord. But if you do have to go to court for anything to get possession, this is the evidence that you're going to need to make sure that you're showing when to the judge on the day. So you're going to have to make sure the deposit's protected. The property will have to be registered on the property portal. Now that's not up and running yet, but when it is, you'll have to make sure you're doing that. You have to make sure your safety certificate's complete and in date. And you're going to have to make sure that you've got strong records of communication with your tenant, and also if there's arrears, record of the arrears so that you can show how much arrears have built up. So the documentation in your files will be crucial for court. Has anyone here ever taken more than 1 month's rent in advance from the tenant? Yeah. It does happen occasionally because sometimes tenants will come along and they might be new to the area and might not have security of jobs, so they'll offer to pay 6 months rent in advance as a way of bypassing the difference in criteria. From the 1st of May, you won't be able to take any more than the first month's rent in advance. You can take the deposit, that's separate, but they can only pay 1 month's rent in advance, and you can't request that until the tenancy agreement is signed. So you have to make sure that the tenancy agreement is signed and then request the rent. If you do it the other way around, you could be liable for a fine. And all of these fines are at that special number of £7,000 for each breach. So if you do a few things wrong, they could add up quickly. The tenant could choose to pay the rent in advance after they first moved in, but you can't request it. Would you agree with me? Over the last few years, the rental market's been quite busy. There's been a lot of tenants fighting over properties when they come on the market. Yeah. Occasionally, let's say you've marketed a property and the rent's £1,000 a month. It might be in a really popular area and you might have a lot of people that are after it. Occasionally, a tenant might say, I know, I'm going to offer more because that will get me to the top of the list. So they offer £1,100 and you think, yeah, that's fine, I'm going to take that. More rent. Winning. After the 1st of May, you have to make sure that the property is priced at the correct price. You won't be able to accept anything over the asking price. So positioning the property on the market is going to be crucial. And again, if you accept anything over what it's marketed at, £7,000 fine. Can you see that these fines are totting up? Go to the next slide. Rent increases, yeah. Who here has increased the rent in the last 12 months? Yeah, a few of you. So at the moment, there's a few different ways that you could potentially increase the rent. It might be written in your tenancy agreement and says it goes up once a year by CPI. You might have just a general conversation, not increase the rent for a few years, sorry. Not increase it for a few years, you might just have an informal agreement. Or you might use a Section 13. But after the 1st of May, a Section 13 notice is going to be the only mechanism that you can use to increase the rent. So it's a prescribed form, prescribed notice, and you have to give the tenant 2 months' notice. Now, if you increase the rent by more than market value, or the tenant thinks it's an unfair increase, they can challenge it via the tribunal. And what's important to note about this is if it goes to tribunal, it could take months for somebody to look at it and decide whether that rent is fair. They could set it to be higher, they could set it at what you said, or they could set it lower. But it won't be backdated, it will be from the date that it's set by the tribunal. And then even then, the tenant could say, well, all right, I'll agree to it, but I can't pay for it for another 3 months because I can't afford it. So even then, the timescales can just lag on and on. So yeah, from 1st of May, section 13 is the way to increase your rent. You can only increase it once every 12 months, and you're going to have to make sure that you're in line with market values, otherwise the tenants can challenge it. There's going to be a ban on discrimination against tenants. Now generally, there is kind of a ban on discrimination anyway. We've got the Equality Act, but it is going to be an offence if you say you can't take a tenant because they're on benefits. You're going to have to make sure that you're assessing their suitability for the property, their affordability. Otherwise, if you're found in breach, you could be liable for a fine. Who here's got a pet? Yeah, a few of us. I've got a dog as well. The government think that tenants should also have a right to enjoy pets, and they should have a right to ask for a pet. So from 1st of May, landlords will not be able to unreasonably decline a pet in a property. If it's your main house and you plan to move back to it in the future and you've got a severe allergy to pets, then that could be a reasonable reason to say no. Or if it's a leasehold property and the head leaseholder says pets aren't allowed, then again that's a valid reason. But the tenant must request it in writing and you must respond within 28 days. Then you either have to find a reason as to why it's not suitable to have a rat in the property, or you have to accept it. Yeah.
You can't insist to keep it in a cage.
Well, you can probably put out stipulations as to you've got to make sure that it's in a cage and it's contained. Yeah. Yeah, we're going to have questions at the end, so I'm nearly at the end now as well, Amy. So yeah, this is pretty much my last slide. But so what's following late 26? There's going to be a property ombudsman set up, so they will deal with landlord and tenant disputes. So if a tenant has a complaint about the landlord, they can complain to the ombudsman, and the ombudsman will look into that. Landlords will have to register themselves and their properties on a register. Now we've got something similar in Wales called Rent Smart Wales, so if you've got a property in Wales you might already be aware of this. You have to register yourself and the property for a small fee, and then tenants can check that the property is registered. And then Decent Home Standard will follow 2035. This incorporates things like AWAB's law, so controlling condensation and mould, and making sure that properties are of a decent standard for tenants to live in. So I hope you found that useful. I'm at the end of my slides now, so I'll hand you back over to David.
Yeah, can I just say, by the way, Nicola, it's the first time Nicola's ever done any public speaking, by the way, so when people first meet Nicola, they always think, it's very sweet and innocent, but I always think when you get Nicola in a room full of 200 landlords, she can be quite scary sometimes, to be honest. So I think one of the biggest takeaways, and we are going to go to our Q&A very, very shortly, just to wrap up, one of the big things we've been discussing is that as we go into this new era of the private rental sector, one of the biggest things is you've got to have evidence and you've got to get your house in order, so to speak. So that's why we offer this tenancy health check. So again, please take advantage of this. We've opened up our diaries for the next week. QR code on the screen, 2 QR codes here. You should all have the QR code. If for whatever reason you can't scan it, all of our team, they're all in bright yellow t-shirts, much to their horror. Give us a wave, guys. Yeah. They can book you one directly as well. And we are, shortly after the Q&A, the Q&A will probably last about 20-25 minutes. And then anyone who's got a little poker chip in their tote bag, that can get you a free drink in the bar. The double doors there will open up shortly afterwards. So if you would like to join us in the bar, perhaps if there's any questions that you don't want to ask the room and you want to speak to us one-to-one, either book a tenancy health check or by all means come and grab us in the bar afterwards. That's where we're going to be. So final things, landlord support community on Facebook. Please come and join us there. And if you want to ask any questions, you're more than welcome to do so. And the podcast we have as well. We've actually got, so next week we've got an accountant in Chester coming on to talk about making tax digital, which is going to come very, very shortly. So he's going to come and explain exactly what we need to be doing. And if anyone's got any questions they would like me to ask him, I've not written any yet. So you've all got my email address. If anyone wants to email me any questions, I will ask those on the podcast next week. We're recording on Wednesday, I think. We've also got an energy company coming on to talk about grants for landlords so that we can hit that target for the EPC grade upgrades for 2030. So with regards to the Q&A, we're going to go to our Q&A now, which Simon's very kindly going to host. We do like a QR code here at Cavendish, so you can either put your hand up and Simon will come to you and either give you the mic or shout at Simon and he'll repeat it on the mic, or if you want to scan the QR code, you can type the question and it'll go straight to Simon's phone. We like tech, don't we, Simon? So thank you very much. I'll hand you over to Simon. We're going to stay on stage, aren't we?
So, if you've got a question, please raise your hand. I'll come over with a mic, and if you speak into it like this, we'll hear you. I've got short legs, so bear with me.
Good evening, it's Noris Jones, and thank you once again. I believe we're going to have to put a new form of tenancy agreement stroke contract in place with tenants. When will that be available for us to use, please?
So, sorry, I didn't quite hear the first part.
A new form for tenants.
A new
Tenancy agreements.
So there's been draft ones issued by government, and I think they're still working on finalising them now. But if you've got a tenancy agreement in writing currently, then you don't need to issue a new tenancy agreement. It's only for ones that move in after the 1st of May. So we'll have templates set up ready for that after then. What you will have to do is just issue your tenant with an information leaflet, which is going to be provided by the government. They said that that's going to be out at some point in March, but we haven't seen it yet. Pardon? It'll automatically convert it over, yeah. Yeah.
Hi Nicola, I've got a property in Chester which is a leasehold property, and it's a block in a block of 65 flats. The head lease agreement prevents and prohibits animals being kept up in the property, but there have been numerous either leaseholders themselves or tenants keeping pets in those properties. The management company found it very difficult to monitor because they'd have to be there all the time looking out for who's got pets where when. I have heard that if there was an argument between a landlord and a tenant and they went to court, it's likely that the judge would side with the tenant because it's a pet.
Right.
And even though it's actually breaking the law and the agreement of the head lease. So I just wondered if you had any views on that, any experience of that.
No, I don't. We haven't heard anything on that so far, but that's going to be really hard for the leaseholder, isn't it? Because it's the judge of yeah.
Somebody else has already allowed a pet, then a judge would say, well, it's already happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do think from a marketing point of view, if you've got a property that's got a leasehold and a leasehold agreement and it says no pets, the advice that we've had is put that in the marketing and say, sorry, pets aren't allowed due to the agreements, just to try and avoid the tenants then coming forward for the properties.
Yeah, definitely.
Sorry, then I'm restricting the ability, as you said in one of your slides, I'm not marketing it to everybody, including those with pets. I'm already breaking the law because I'm not allowing tenants to have pets. So there's my £7,000 fine.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Yeah.
Raise your hands, I can find reference as well.
Yeah, it's a question very much in line with one of your slides was saying you can't discriminate against tenants on benefits, which I understand, and it's been there for a while. But even if it has a mortgage restriction on it, where does that leave the landlord? Pretty much in similar.
So the information we've received from a lot of our companies that we like Property Mart that we sign up to is that those kind of clauses in mortgages will become null and void, and if it's an insurance restriction, then a lot of the insurers are writing them out of their paperwork now. Yeah.
sorry, there will be an overlap between existing mortgages and by the time it's
Yeah, of
enforced.
course. What we've been told is that the mortgages will have to just remove that clause. People would have to probably inquire with their own mortgage providers.
I had a rental property. Person was great at paying, and then they unfortunately lost their jobs. So then they were entitled to universal credit to pay the rent, but universal credit wouldn't pay until they had 2 months worth of arrears. I saw that you were saying that come 3 months will move. Do you believe then that universal credit then will move to 3 months worth of arrears as well, before they'll kick in and start paying?
I mean, you'd hope so, wouldn't you?
Because I'm just thinking, like, before it was 2 months and then
Yeah.
we had the massive arrears and had to chip away at it. But now I'm thinking, if the government are now saying 3 months, is universal credit going to move along with them and say they won't step up and pay the rent till 3 months worth of arrears?
Yeah, it's really a really valid point, and I don't know the answer to that with the local councils, I'm sorry. I'll have to see if we can find out.
Can you provide any more clarity on the property portal register, i.e. how much, and once you've registered a property, do you have to register it every year, every 5 years, etc.?
Yeah, so in Wales, we operate in North Wales as well, and we've got Rent Smart Wales there, which operate similar, well, kind of similar, don't they? Basically, you have to be licensed to be a landlord, or you have to register, and the registration is about £30, £50, something like that. It's a nominal fee, but one-off, and it lasts for 5 years. But they haven't given clarification on what they're going to do in England. It's one of those things that they're not going to do this before the 1st of May, because as Nicola said, anything that landlords and letting agents need to do we need to do it ASAP. Everything else, they'll kick down the road probably until the back end of this year, I would imagine. But I can't imagine. I mean, in Wales, if it's 30 quid for 5 years, I mean, who knows? But I would imagine it would be a nominal fee. Yeah.
So the website's not set up yet. We're waiting for more guidance on when it comes out, and then we can let landlords know how they do it. Yeah.
If you wait for the mic, everyone will hear you. So just raise your hand and I will come and find you.
Basically, we're waiting for the government. Yeah.
Hi. When the new rules come into effect, is it going to affect Wales and England?
So
Because we've got properties in both.
it's slightly going to affect Wales from the 1st of June, and that's to do with discrimination. So the rest of it is England, but Wales picks up the discrimination part, yeah.
Hi, just going back to the comparison with Rent Smart Wales, you talked about £30, but the biggest cost is actually doing the courses and that you need to be registered as a landlord. So is there any perception that that's going to be the same in England, or will they actually accept the qualifications from Wales going through?
Unfortunately not. I mean, so in Wales, yes, you're correct. If you're a self-managed landlord, you have to do the course, and then you pay for the license fee, which the license fee is several £100,000, isn't it now? So the registration is £30. That's if you were having it managed with an agent, let's say. But yeah, no, to do the license, so that is separate, because in England, all they're bringing in is registration. They're not bringing in licensing. So as a landlord in England, if you self-manage, which most of you in this room are, you will not need to do a training course or buy a license. It's literally just registration. So it is different to Wales in that respect. Kind of, yeah. Yeah. So is that in Wolverhampton, by the way, or oh, not okay. Yeah. So is that under selective licensing? Is it? Yeah. Yes, there is selective licensing in Liverpool. So far, not in Chester. Yes.
Let's hope it doesn't come.
Hi. I've got a small block of 8 apartments, and I'm really stressing about the EPC thing. It's an old property, and as it stands at the moment, I just can't see how I'm going to get them to a C. I've had various companies contact me to say we can come and do a survey, we can tell you what to do, but I'm not convinced whether the criteria has actually been set in stone yet, and I don't want to do something that will not actually get me where I need to be, but obviously I'm trying to be proactive and do as much as I can. So I'm doing one of the properties up. I don't know what heating systems to put in.
Have you had a new EPC carried
No.
out to see where you are?
No, but I did have the person that did some of the ones when I bought the building.
Yeah.
And I'd asked her to sort of say, could she suggest what I could do, but nothing tangible.
Well,
than that.
so on our podcast, I think it was just before Christmas, I recorded an episode with a domestic energy assessor who operates in Chester, and it was quite a lengthy episode, but one of the things we were talking about on there is exactly this. So his advice, and I'll give you his name and number if you want, if you grab me afterwards or send me a message. He's more than happy to come and do his advice is, we'll do a new EPC, and then not lodge it properly, because that comes at a cost to him, and actually just basically give you the information you need. This is where it's at, because actually the EPCs have been recalibrated lately. So if you had an EPC, let's say 1 year ago, if you had the same EPC done today, it would be a slightly different rating. Everything's been recalibrated in the way they measure. It depends. Great question.
I didn't want to hear that.
So the first step is to get another EPC, see where you're at, and then basically he will then be able to advise you on what you need to do, and then what the best action is to take. I would say. Yeah, so grab me afterwards. Yeah.
Technology's working. We've got a QR code question. Do you think the renters portal coming in late 2026 is a way for the government to catch landlords who aren't declaring rental income?
Big Brother is always watching, isn't it? It's definitely going to be a way for local councils to monitor that, I think, and see.
Yeah. That wouldn't surprise me if I'm honest.
And on the pet question, pets are a topic for the evening. I just actually checked, and any domesticated animal, any animal that can be domesticated can be classed as a pet, rats included. So, can you refuse pets if the property is an HMO?
That's a very good question that I don't know the answer to.
Do you not know?
No.
No, I don't either, to be honest. Sure, that's a great
Try and
question.
find out.
Let us find out for you.
We'll find out any answers to questions we can't answer today and send them.
Yeah, but we.
It would go back to the president's again, if the police or whatever had pets.
Come through to the superior leads. Yeah.
That if they had severe allergy, then we were less than that for now in the room.
Yeah.
Stated, otherwise it's fair game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Richard. I'm a landlord, strangely, but I'm also an energy advisor for Citizens Advice Cheshire West as a part-time job. So on the point that the lady made a couple of people ago, about upgrading your energy infrastructure in your rental properties.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk to anybody. I'd happily talk to that lady about the Warm Homes local grant, which is what's going to be happening for the next 3 years, and that's the government's initiative, where there is some help for landlords who are renting properties. For the first one, I believe, they haven't been absolutely clear about it, the government, but that it is still part of the Warm Homes local grant, which is replacing things like, you might have heard of Eco4, or the boiler upgrade scheme, all of those sorts of things, some of which are staying and some of which are going, and it's all in flux at the moment. There is still help there for landlords who are upgrading heating systems.
Brilliant.
But most of it is if you're doing it with carbon neutral, so you're going biomass or you're going heat pumps, as opposed to they're not going to be putting in dirty boilers anymore for nothing. There will be financial help there.
So we actually had a contact for Eco4 who we used to do some work with, and he pretty much disappeared, didn't he? Yeah. So we are looking for a new contact on that. So if we could get your details, that you can put us in touch, that would be fantastic, and then we can share it with the room.
Absolutely, yeah.
That would be brilliant.
No problem.
One more back. Got one more back here.
Okay.
Back to pets again. I had read a couple of years ago that actually you can insist the tenant takes out insurance to protect.
Yeah, so they did. That was going to be a suggestion in the when it was a bill. The tenant would have to have insurance, but they actually took that out, so it's not going to be a legal requirement. You may be able to request that a tenant has it, but I don't think it would be anything that they would legally have to have.
Yeah, they were going to introduce deposits as well for pet deposits, but then when they were sort of going through the process, we were talking about it, weren't we, on our last webinar, where we were saying, well, if you have a pet deposit, then do you have to lodge that as in just like you do a normal deposit, and it would get, and you can't take more than 5 weeks rent. So how would that affect that? Which is probably why they took it out. So yeah, unfortunately, it's another thing that they pulled the rug on that one, which isn't ideal in our opinion. Most of this we don't agree with, by the way. You know, we just say that very openly. We're on your side very much. You know, this affects our business very much. So you know, we've had to retrain all our staff over the last year, very much on a lot of guesswork until very recently, because obviously these proposals they're put out there and they've been changing and changing. You know, so we're doing constant training on this, and it's a big change. We don't agree. A lot of this we don't agree with. There's some positives, obviously, but
We've got one more back here.
yeah, one more, brilliant.
Yeah, it's not about pets or rats. Could you guys give us a bit of synopsis on your own portfolios, what you guys do in your properties, if you've got tenants you deal with, or any other strategies you do in the current market?
So, do you read the question?
What are you doing with your own portfolio property?
In terms of,
As in our own personal portfolio, or
Yeah, correct.
so I don't actually own any properties personally, but if you want to grab me in the bar, you know, I can share with you what we help landlords with and what we would recommend. You know, by all means.
Since this Act appears to be very much weighted in favour of the tenant, and you talk about the suitability of tenants, can you still make the usual checks into their finances
yeah.
and all the other things? There's nothing to restrict you from really checking that tenant.
No, so you can still go through all the normal referencing criteria. So if you're using a referencing provider, they'll do the credit check, financial checks and everything like that to check them out. There's nothing against doing that. So then that would help you make an informed decision as to whether that's able to proceed or not, or afford it.
Is there any insurance company that you recommend
Sorry.
for buy-to-let properties?
So I don't think we're technically allowed to fully recommend insurers because of the FCA, but there is a company that we work with that does our referencing called Let Alliance. They offer landlord insurance as well, so that'd be worth having a chat with. Let Alliance. Let Alliance, yeah.
Yes, the car air fresheners. That's that. If you go in your tote bag, the car air freshener. That's
Has
one.
there been any new legislation in relation to the deposit scheme and what the tenant we can't return to? Has there been any?
No, there's no changes on that. There's no changes on the deposit regulations.
I'm getting my 10,000 steps in.
There you are, aren't you?
Good evening. I'd like to ask, is there any government help with the EPC being raised to a C? We have two properties that are one a Victorian semi-detached and one a stone cottage and terrace. And obviously I'm concerned about the quality of the property. We've done a lot of improvements ourselves and put in vent air systems so that it's not condensated, and we've really tried hard, but I'm just concerned that I think one is a D and one is an E, and come 2028 that's the next EPC when we look at it again, and if it's not possible they will be going on the market. I feel that strongly about it.
Yeah.
Is there any government help?
So I think there are grants out there. It does come down to tenant situations and stuff like that. That might help. I think there is a cap on landlords have to spend so much before the grants kick in. But if you've done as much as you can do and you can't, and you've gone to that cap, then there should be route to exemption from there.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have a request. Could you go back to the 6-sided wheel of fortune and tell us what the various acronyms stand for?
Book a tenancy health check, and I will gladly tell you. Because this is what we coach landlords one-to-one, so it's probably not appropriate for this room. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it would take a whole day to go through it, but I'll put it back on the screen. Take a photo of it if you want. But if anyone wants to speak to me about it, more than happy to. But yeah, that's what we call. There we go. There we go. Any questions?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm a landlord, unfortunately.
We're just in place.
What it is with the EPCs, I've had a call yesterday off a company. What they said to me, if your houses are all a D, high Ds, our guys can go into your property, spend a couple of hours there, and when they walk out, it will be a C. For £450.
That sounds like a deal. That sounds great.
But I'd rather pay that than pay thousands for getting the houses, getting heat pumps put in, solar panels put in, and things like that. It's just a complete rip-off.
Yeah.
And I think, like I've got electric houses, all storage heaters, and they're lovely and warm. And we're going to be putting these other heat pumps in. What, not going to be warm enough? Rubbish.
That sounds like a great idea.
Yeah, but like I said, all landlords, I speak to a lot of people there, and they're all anxiety. Do you ever think about doing a list, like to say, these are the main things what a landlord should do? Like sort of having all your electrical circuit tested, your gas certificate, your EPCs, doing a full list like that on your websites, to say everyone can see that.
Yeah, so we
anxiety down.
Yeah, so we do have a tenancy compliance checklist. So it's what actually when we do a tenancy health check, we do take you through that exact checklist. And if anyone does that process with us, we email you checklist in advance. So there's 57 points to it. It's about 3 or 4 pages long, isn't it? And that's basically everything you need to know. And it's split into sections, isn't it? Where it's before the tenancy, during the tenancy, ending the tenancy. So yeah, that is something we can give you definitely.
Well, with the new legislation coming in and the new tenancy agreements with the ones we got already and we're only increase the rent till next year. With those ones there now, with the new legislation coming in, like the lead with it, do we have to improve the bond schemes? Do we have to alter that in any way? Because you've altered the bond scheme with the new legislation into it.
David, could you summarise that question for everyone else?
Is this as in, guys have written statements and the leaflet, is that what?
Yeah, so the gentleman was saying, would we have to alter anything to do with the bond or the deposit?
Right,
and the tenancy agreements change? I don't believe we will. No, everything's just staying as it is. Yeah, so that comes under the tenant deposit regulations. If you're not complied with that, then you could be liable for 3 times the deposit if you've not registered it or given prescribed information. That still will be in place when all this comes in.
We have a question back here.
Hi, I just wanted to ask about selling, actually. And I've had valuation on something from you guys, but I'm seeing a lot of prices go down in open market sales. Is this likely to be affecting the closed market sales, or is it more likely done on some kind of multiplier based on rent?
It's so something that really affects the value of a tenanted property is the rental return and how compliant the property is. Because the way I would sort of phrase it or position it to a buy-to-let investor would be, would you buy a property that, let's say, is only getting 60% of market value rent and there's a few missing bits in compliance? You probably wouldn't pay full market value. So quite a lot of landlords come to us and they're thinking of selling their property, and the first thing we do a tenancy health check on it to make sure it's fully compliant, so we can put our name to it when we're offering it to sale. But the second thing we do is we look at the rental income as well. So it's quite common that we come across, let's say, a property that is worth £1,000 a month, but they're only getting 600, 700. So our advice to the landlord is actually optimise the property first, optimise the rental income. So look at increasing the rent and actually delaying selling it maybe for a year, which I appreciate doesn't help if you're thinking of if you want to sell before the renters' rights comes in 6 weeks' time. But over the last few years, we've worked with a lot of landlords to get it ready for sale. Or the other option is to go down the on-market route and go with vacant possession, which, because at the end of the day, if you're selling a tenanted investment property, then yes, the yield does have a big effect on the value. Whereas if you're selling a vacant possession property, like, you know, that property could be sold to a first-time buyer, could be sold to a homeowner. So it is a bigger market. It's just you've got to weigh up the positives and negatives of which route of sale, basically.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've done what you said there, which is maximise the rents. I'm spoken to Phil about it, so I'm at that point. So maybe actually a tenancy
Yeah.
would be good, and then I can compare. Basically.
We just to throw this in as well. We if we sell it using this route of sale, we don't charge a fee either, by the way. So there's no estate agency fee. So our standard estate agent fee is 1.25% plus VAT, and we charge a minimum fee of £2,500. But with this route, we don't charge you anything because we charge the buyer a small sourcing fee, basically. So yeah, there are quite a lot of benefits to that type of sale. If you want to have a chat with us about it, more than happy to. Our sales team are at the back.
Any more questions?
Everyone wants to go to the bar.
David, you've written a book.
Yes, I have. In fact, yes.
Is it a bestseller, David?
Yes, we always mention it.
Can people in this room get this book, David?
Yeah, so
How can people get this book, David?
Now that you ask. If anyone wanted a copy of this book, by the way, it is available on Amazon. But, in fact, because we love action takers, for anyone who books a tenancy house check, by the way, live in the room tonight, you've done it? Yeah. Right, okay. The team, everyone in the yellow t-shirts, there was a box of books somewhere. For anyone who's booked a tenancy health check or books one live with them, they'll give you a copy of the book. If you come and find me, I'll even sign it for you. So,
how can you refuse now?
It's probably worth more than signed, I don't know. But, or if you want to go on Amazon, by all means, it is available on Amazon as well. So, if that's all the questions, thank you very much for coming. And if you want to join us in the bar,
All the best, mate. We'll start first. Take care. Give yourself good luck.
So we put on an exhibit in Heswell. Okay. And it was a landlord exhibit. Ah. So it was the same. Well, we didn't put it on. We attended the exhibit. Okay.
That's going to be